This book is a true representation of the story of American spirit, telling the story of American whiskey for the last 100 years with 100 legendary bottles that meant something to fans like us. As I started to kind of fall in love with American whiskey, and as I started to fall in love with bourbon, I was trying to find like websites and information, and I was surprised, 15 years ago that there really wasn't much, almost nothing in the way of any sort of like true kind of like Wikipedia of American whiskey. And I remember reaching out to some of the distilleries and asking them if they had certain photographs, asking them where on their website could I find some of the history associated with some of their most iconic bottles. And most of them were like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't have that bottle. I've never seen that bottle. I'm like, what do you mean you've never seen that bottle? I've heard about this bottle for several years from a variety of super fans. And so I remember thinking to myself as a fan, like, how hard, how challenging, and almost how disappointing that we have such an incredible spirit, something that's so special to who we are as a country that's uniquely American. And yet there's no central place, whether it's for beautiful photography, insight or information, or a place to connect with other enthusiasts at this level. When I thought about being able to launch something like Bourbon Lore, number one on my list was, could I have the opportunity to work with somebody like Clay Risen? There's no one else in the world that's written more books around whiskey, both Scotch, Irish, Japanese, and American, than Clay Risen. There's nobody that has a level of appreciation and heritage and getting into the lore of American whiskey in the way that Clay Risen has. I feel extremely honored to be able to call Clay not only my friend, not only my mentor, but also my business partner in helping bring to life something that has never been brought to life before.
Bourbon Lore, Legends of American Whiskey, is essentially the history of American whiskey in 100 bottles. We spent a lot of time going through the Bourbon Lore collection, trying to figure out which 100 bottles would we pick to tell this story. Every bottle gets its own page, its own spread, some wonderful photography, and then the story of the bottle and the context of the bottle, so where it fits in. I also hope that people look at it as a resource, because for me, I did put a lot of time and effort into researching this book. And so for me, that was really the hard part, is making sure that the stories that I was telling were informed, accurate, and thorough.
The Bourbon Lore collection now consists of several thousand bottles that span over 100 years of American whiskey. When I first had the idea that maybe we could share some of these bottles with a bigger audience, I thought, well, what a beautiful thing to share in the same way that my dad shared in the antique shop. Let's create the world's first American whiskey book where it kind of tells the story of some of these iconic legends, right? These bottles that are almost just folklore that nobody even knows whether or not they really existed because they haven't seen them, they haven't held them, they haven't tasted them. Can we bring some of that to life?
It was all something that came from basically Mason's idea in his childhood that kind of brought it all together. When we started with the branding, it was based on the images in his office and kind of what his office looked like that had his huge whiskey collection. So we started there, dug into Mason's background, kind of who he was, where he grew up, what we could tie into the brand look of Bourbon Lore. After we got that all dialed, then it was like, okay, let's start thinking about this book.
Their images are gonna tell the story, right? These bottles are gonna be the characters in the story of this unique one-of-one book. And I was like, all right, so let's talk to some photographers. And so I started reaching out, having a few conversations. When I shared with some photographers, like, what do you think about maybe photographing 300, 400, 500 bottles that I've been able to have come into my life? And they're like, you have 500 bottles that you would like me to photograph? And I was like, absolutely. They're like, thank you, but no thank you.
Dan called me in September of 2020, I think it was, and said, hey, I got this guy who's got this huge whiskey collection and it's out of control and he wants to photograph it and he's having a hard time finding somebody who's the right fit. And I told him I had a guy, and I met Mason and we looked at his collection, and I started to realize the breadth and what we were talking about, because I didn't really know at the time. How interesting to be able to shoot like 130 or 140 years of a certain type of product and watch it evolve, and the brands evolve, and their designs evolve, and like think about like the layout, typography, brand design, label design, bottle design, package design, how it all worked, and just happened to be something that I was also interested in. I didn't know a lot, and I still don't know a lot about bourbon, but I know a lot more than I did, that's for sure.
We wanted the book to be big enough that the photos of every bottle is almost to size. A lot of whiskey books will have one single photo, but this has just beautiful photography that you can really tell exactly what that bottle looks like, all the little details on the labels and things, because I think all that tells a huge story.
I shot thousands of pictures, and then, front, back, sides, boxes, bottle with box by itself. There was a lot of photographs. Everything looks beautiful. I'm very proud to have been a part of that project, and I'm thankful that they brought me on.
When you went into Mason's old office, he had all these different advertisements from the West, from the Southwest and Arizona and stuff hanging around. We knew that we had to have a component of illustration, so the cover is the horse with a brand mark. Each chapter starts off with a custom illustration that Tommaso did that basically tells the story of the distillery. It's definitely a big part of the book.
Super stoked to be a part of this project. The level of commitment to a project of this caliber is crazy. I mean, you're talking about countless hours. Everyone that got involved was super passionate about it. Layout is amazing. Photography is incredible and super crisp. For me, to be a part of the illustration process is super exciting. It's offered a good opportunity to explore different styles that I probably otherwise wouldn't have. Probably aren't the most perfect, but they're suggestive. There's a beauty in that, and I feel like that's also in whiskey. Master distillers are on a mission to discover perfection, but it's always flawed. There's always that human element. Definitely add this to your library. You won't be disappointed.
We hope that you are able to not only, dig into the photo assets, dig into the copy, but experience a level of aura and energy about American whiskey that we couldn't be more proud of.
What I hope people get out of reading this book is that the story of American whiskey is not the story of an ascent or a descent, but rather the building of a heritage. And that while there are periods of ups and downs for the industry, ultimately what's being built is a legacy that goes back 150 plus years. And so I hope people take away from the book that historical appreciation, that bourbon is not simply a consumer product built on a bunch of myths and marketing, but that there actually is a bedrock history to it that informs and accentuates the whiskey that we drink today.
So the legends of American whiskey is more than the bottles in the book. It's about a community, a relationship, and a sense of adventure that I believe can and should be created in homes around the world, because this story of America's spirit is a story that is just getting started.